Thanks, Josh. I'm doing well, Tyler. I am doing well. Thank you for asking. You know, I had lunch earlier today. It was pretty good. Is this not the right time for this conversation? Is that no? It's never too. We can always be friendly. Hello, everybody. I'm Brian. My name is Brian Williams, and I'm the young adults pastor here. I preach every once in a while, and I'm thankful I get to do it tonight. And get to share with you just some stuff that God has put before me and hopefully before all of you that will hopefully help you and serve you. So if you're new to what's going on around here, welcome. Glad you're here. We have spent quite a while talking about romance in the kingdom of God. And there's a lot to that. There's a whole lot to it. And even if you just like go romance in like, you know, I don't know, on Instagram, like in the most like narrow sphere of things, there's like so much to talk about because you've probably encountered so many weird things where you're like, but what if he's cute. I don't know. Like, why does this person keep DMing me? How do I handle that? Like things get complicated, right? It gets really messy. And so we've been talking about that over the last couple weeks, like a lot. But we finished the series. We finished all that we had planned to talk about. But then we realized, based on a lot of the things you guys were saying and talking about and sharing with me and Sarah, is that there's more things to talk about. That we need to take more time on this. We're just doing this week, next week. We'll kind of be wrapping it up after that. But my hope is that this is a conversation that continues. Actually, I don't even need to hope that. It's gonna, right? Like, does like romance not dominate like a lot of your mind and attention and conversations? Probably for many of you. Yeah. So it's gonna happen. And so it's important that we talk about how to go about it, that we wrestle with it together. That you're not wrestling with it in isolation, nor wrestling with it independent of the one who kind of created all this stuff, which is the Lord himself, who kind of understands you better than anyone else, who understands what the healthiest way to navigate emotions and feelings and attraction, who can coach you through the complexities of relationships and disappointment and all that kind of stuff. We got to do it with him. We got to be talking through these things in the under the umbrella of the Lord himself and his word. So tonight, one of the things that kept coming up in various ways was basically about like emotional boundaries, about guarding your heart, kind of how to do that. What does that look like? There are lots of questions about that. And I can speak from experience for myself. I have been in that place many times where I'm like, my emotions went further than the relationship was. And then I bore the brunt of that. I had to deal with that on the back end. I've been in the place on the other side where someone else's emotions towards me went further than the relationship was. And I had to navigate that and figure out how to like help and not make things worse. And there's also moments, to be honest, where I can look back and where I was able to suddenly see, or actually was just kind of aware, but ignoring the fact that I was kind of doing it on purpose. Because it felt nice, because it was good, because it was like, this makes me feel good. I didn't have no intention, but maybe you've been there on one end of that. This stuff is messy. It makes things worse, not better, right? When we don't handle these things well. And so that's why we're talking about this tonight, because it's important. We need coaching. I think we all need coaching. And that's what I'm going to try and do tonight. You'll kind of see as we go along why I mean try, because this is complex. Guarding our hearts is complex. Okay, guard your heart. That's maybe a phrase you've heard before, especially if you've grown up in the church or been a part of the church and, the church. Then that might be a phrase you've used or you've like heard before. Well, it comes out of Proverbs 4, chapter 4, verse 23. And it's just this one quick line: above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. as the examples I just showed or talked about, like we kind of understand the importance of guarding our heart because we've understood what it's like when it hasn't been protected well. We know the unsettled, disjointed corruption of our hearts and feelings when we let the wrong things in, or when we embrace and surrender our hearts to the wrong things or to the wrong people in the wrong ways, the wrong times. Like we know that. This Proverb's calling out the truth. Things we already know but sometimes don't quite own up to is that like, whoa, slow down. This is a big deal. Like take this more seriously. Protect this more intentionally because it's vital that you do. It's at the core of who you are. This proverb calls to attention the pinnacle seat of who we are that our hearts are because it's so, all that we do flows from it. Okay, there's this guy in preparing for this that I read his stuff. And his name's John Gill. He's a theologian. He was a pastor in like the 1700s. And I really loved his reflection on this one sentence. And the first part of it goes like this. He's reflecting on this, and he starts kind of talking about the various faculties that make up our hearts, the different things that compose our hearts. And he writes this. Listen carefully, okay? With diligence, we are to keep our understanding from error, to keep our will from perverseness, the conscience clear of guilt, our affections from being inordinate and set on evil objects, and the thoughts from being employed on bad subjects, and the whole, that is the heart, from falling into the hands of the enemy. Great diligence needs to be used in keeping it, since it is naturally so deceitful and treacherous. That's referencing Jeremiah 17:9, says the heart is deceitful above all things, beyond cure. Who can understand it? A strict eye is to be kept upon it. All the avenues to it are to be watched, that nothing hurtful enters or that anything evil comes out. It is to be kept by all manner of means that can be thought of, by prayer, by hearing, by reading, by meditating, and above all, by applying to Christ for his grace and Spirit to sanctify, preserve, and keep it. So, this was really helpful for me. It kind of focused my mind in on what is the heart even. Because guard your heart, like what do we even mean? Even when we say emotions, we can name them, but like, where are they? What does it mean to guard them when I feel like I can't control them? Right? Like, what is that? And he gives such a clear line at the top that basically our heart is understanding, it's our will, it's our conscience, it's our affections, and it's our thoughts. All of those things together, wrapped up, summed up, that is our heart. Those make up the essence of who we are. And from there, right, as the passage says, everything we do flows from those things, from our heart. Guard your heart. Guard your heart. He continues, the heart is the seat of our everyday life, from whence all actions of life are derived, from whence all spiritual and vital actions flow, and which lead unto and issue an eternal life. As is a man's heart, such is his state right now, and so it will be hereafter. If the heart, listen to this, if the heart is quickened and sanctified by the grace of God, the man will live. And the man will not just live, he will live a life of faith and holiness here, and enjoy everlasting life hereafter. And if the heart is right, so will one's actions be, and actions are regulated and dominated by the heart. Our actions will then spring from right principles and be directed to right ends and performed with right views, and great care, therefore, should be taken of the heart, since so much depends on it, and it is so well known to God, the searcher of it. I love this. the heart is quickened and sanctified by the grace of God. That is what defines the trajectory of our hearts. What is it quickened by? What is it stirred by? Is it by our own selfish ambitions? Is it by winning? Is it by not having pain? Is it by what stirs our conscience and our, what was the list? Our conscience, our understanding, our will, our affections, our thoughts. Those things together, like what's at the core of those? What motivates us? What moves us? And it seems like it could be a million things, but it's actually a binary question. It's either God or it's not. To guard your heart, the real question is just that. What dominates your heart? Is it the Lord or is it anything else? Because to guard our hearts is to basically work towards that effort of, Lord, it's all about you. Lord, my heart, all that I am desires you above everything else. If the heart is quickened and sanctified, if it's being made right by the grace of God, then it will be directed to right ends. That is, it will desire for truly good things, resulting in actions performed with right views, that is, intentions and perspective, and all of that springing forth from the right principles, the ethos that comes from God and helps us observe others and ourselves rightly. It'll spring forth from the right principles sown into the fabric of our hearts by God himself. If you want to learn to guard your heart or have emotionally healthy boundaries, this is what we're really asking for. This is the good stuff. This is the stuff that comes by the grace of God, which is his unwarranted blessing. Yeah, Julian, you back there? Could you put up the bridge of the last song we sang? The bridge of the last song. That's confusing. All right. Do you recognize, like think about what we just said here. I lift my hands up, lay my whole life down before you. If you saw someone on the street, you're driving down the street and you see someone come from like behind a wall or whatever, and they're just like, what would you think? What's the first thought that comes to mind? Surrender. Surrender, right? I mean, you might have all these other additional thoughts, but ultimately it's surrender, right? You'd be like, I'm turning around, or like, there's many things. But anytime someone raises their hands, it's a display, it's a show of surrender. And so it has been forever. It's always been a show of surrender. As we lift our hands up and lay our whole lives down, it is an act of surrender. It's a display of surrender. It's to say, Lord, I give up. I give up my striving. I give up my justifications. I give up my pride. I give up my achievements, because I recognize that they just don't weigh out. And I need you. We need him. If you don't know Jesus, I'm going to be talking about wisdom. We're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff, but it's kind of pointless if you don't know him. Because I can tell you good, wise things to do and ways to live, but that really doesn't help you if you don't know him. You can live a good life, an upstanding life, a life that is as free of trouble as possible, and still not know what life really is, not know what the good life actually looks like. I just want to say, if you have never put your faith in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, or me saying that is confusing, please come talk to me after. Please come talk to me. Because Jesus died for you, because you couldn't do anything on your own. I couldn't do anything on my own. I'm so weak. And it's not until I recognize my weakness and his strength to come and rescue me that then I can actually truly live and I can be free from the striving. Because at the end, what I'm going to be talking about is kind of like a surrender. It's just a surrender. To guard your heart, to have healthy boundaries, it kind of requires surrendering. Otherwise, you're just strangling. You're strangling, you're controlling, you're fighting to just make your life better and to not hurt. And all that does is hurt you and hurt others. So, guarding your heart is not something you can do well independent of God. And the reality is that it's not just about you. You can't guard your heart and have emotional boundaries unless there's someone else involved, really. Because if you're like, I'm having emotional boundaries with myself. Brian, stop taking advantage of me. Okay. like it doesn't, what's the point? Like, it happens in the context of relationship. So I'm going to explain something that you've probably heard before, or felt before. So let's say I'll describe a situation, like a scenario, and see if this seems familiar or resonates at all with you, okay? So there's a guy at the gym. He's always kind of looking at you, hanging out with you. You know, you're like, oh, he's kind of cute. But then one day you suddenly realize, I don't know if he actually likes me or he just needs someone to spot him. And I can't tell the difference. Anyone ever been there? Maybe. What about this? I've been here. You suddenly recognize that you are the couple that isn't a couple. But everyone thinks you're a couple because they kind of like they notice you're acting like a couple, and you talk about each other like a couple would, and yet you vehemently, that's a hard word.